I want to thank everybody for showing up. If you want to move closer, it's a big screen, but I don't know about your eyes. The closer I get, the better I feel. The point of the session today, we're going to talk a little bit about open video, how open video can actually help your business a little bit, but more importantly, what's driving adoption or holding adoption back. In the course of the day today, we're going to talk a lot about some data, but we're also going to hear from some illustrious members of the industry. So we got John Poole, who's Vice President for Business Development at Polycom, working with video and cloud solutions in particular at the service providers. Christine Howley, who's a product specialist with Verizon, so working on delivering video services to Verizon's clients. And then John Quinlan. John Quinlan comes to us from Tata. He's Vice President actually over in Asia Pacific. So John gets the prize for longest flight to get here, I think. Anybody come from farther away than Indonesia? No. Okay, there we go. That's a winner. And the great thing is, Peter showed up to a hotel room that would be available approximately 14 hours after he landed, so he's in a great mood. So with that, let's jump in a little bit. I think we'll get maybe Christine or somebody to talk a little bit about OVCC.
Sure. I think John and I were going to do that. I can start with our membership, which has grown markedly, actually, over the last few years. As you can see, the brand names that we have up here are quite impressive. Some of the bigger players in the industry, and we're delighted about the membership. However, now our goal is to drive the membership to bring business-to-business adoption to a place where it's easy to use and reliable. So a lot of the discussion today will be around those inhibitors and what we're doing collectively to address them.
Perfect. So that's who's sponsoring this session, as well as who sponsored the research project, which gave birth to a lot of the data that we're going to look at today. So fourth quarter of last year, OVCC came to Forrester, where I work, to ask some questions about drivers and inhibitors of the adoption of open video. We did a global survey where we talked to information workers, IT decision makers, as well as business decision makers at firms in Europe, in APAC, and in North America, and asked them a series of questions about open video. We also got a little bit down here at the bottom, a wide range of sizes of organizations, but all enterprises, all with 1,000+ employees. So this is not an SMB view of video utilization, but large companies. So we're going to start. We're going to talk a little bit about the buyers, the users, and the decision maker. I'm going to put some data up, talk a little bit about what the data says, and then we'll look to the panel for some insights on what we've got there. So what we see when we talk to information workers is 202 information workers who use video. We're asked this question, who do you communicate with on video? And peers is number one. We got 90% of them saying I'm talking to peers. We got about 60% saying they're talking to the boss, 24% talking to subordinates. So a lot of today's video usage is really internal to the organization, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But you see there is still a reasonable amount of video communication with customers, with partners, vendors, and suppliers. So, like I said, we see a lot internal and a little bit external. And with that, I think we'll turn over maybe to John, who I was supposed to have gone to about OVCC. John, I think we were actually talking about this this morning. So.
Yeah, we were. As a matter of fact, before I speak to the slide, maybe I can put into context the importance of this slide in the comments that I'm going to make. I think everybody in this room has one of these in your pocket. Probably Android, Windows Phone, iPhone. So my question to you is, when was the last time you had to do a test call when you were invited to an audio conference? When was the last time that you needed IT to come help you make that audio conferencing call? These are some of the challenges that we have with video, right? Because ultimately what this group that I'm part of is trying to accomplish is trying to make the use of video no different than what we have. The issue is that the rules for these are clearly defined, so it doesn't matter if you're on a Galaxy tablet or if you're on an iPhone. How those things interoperate and work is ubiquitous. And so there's no issue about adoption and how this gets used. Now flash forward to where we are today and think about all the different video endpoints, right? We could go around the room to say, show me your video endpoints. And then I'd ask you the same question. When was the last time you had to have IT help you get connected to the call? When was the last time you did a test call? And I'd see a lot different response to that. And that really represents the challenge of what this group is trying to address. And so when you look at these results, and one of the things we've done with Forrester is to try to gain better insight on what's really going on out there with the users to help leverage this infrastructure that we've facilitated amongst technology providers and service providers. We've tried to build a PSTN for video and for unified communications in advance of actually having something, a regulated body actually do that. So if you take all that into consideration, and now you look at some of these results, they become very insightful. So in this particular one where it talks about with whom do you communicate, you see that the largest people or the largest groups of users are tightly knit individuals within an organization. Communication between peers, between the subordinate and the boss. And the issue is that those are relatively risk-free. So in other words, an individual is not putting his faith into the technology so that if there's an issue and the call doesn't actually go off as planned, then the risk is relatively low. So I think this kind of information really supports, right? There's two ways to look at this. The first three are internal calls, and the bottom 5 are really about external calls. And what you see is that the adoption and the use is heavily slated towards internal use and between people who already know one another. And so as we at the OVCC are looking at how do we kind of help encourage people to be using our PSTN, it's very insightful to understand, well, who's using it now and how can we as members of the OVCC actually take information like this and begin an education campaign on how to more broadly leverage the use of video. But this is very insightful because I think, in my opinion, this really supports a lot of what we're seeing in the market to begin with. So those would be my initial reaction, Henry.
Yep, that's great. And that's one thing to definitely stress here in the course of this. If somebody sees data they don't understand, or if you disagree with what one of the panelists says, jump up, let us know. And let's have that discussion, because I think the way to develop a market rationally is to have open discussion about it. So we went on to ask, do you know how to provide an address to external people of our information workers? And at the same time, we asked the IT decision maker, how often is external addressing a failure mode for video communications? And what we heard, 80–90% don't know how to provide an address, externally or internally. Surprisingly enough. Now internally, I think we'll hear a little bit of talk about maybe address books and things like that are easier. But despite the fact that 80% don't know how to give a address externally for a video conference, it's seen as a failure mode by IT, most of the time by about 31 and occasionally by 40. So IT doesn't see this as a regular failure mode, while information workers clearly have no idea how to give an address. So with addressing and public connection, I think maybe Christine will ask you at Verizon, you guys have been in the business of making it very easy to know what telephone numbers are for a while. What does this mean to you for video numbers?
Well, it's a very interesting set of statistics, and I think it speaks a little bit to the reasons why John's slide looked the way it did. I mean, certainly 80% who understand how to use video internally is not a surprise to anyone, because it's an internal dial plan, it's well known, well defined among the corporation. However, the fact that 2/3 don't know how to use it outside of the organization is troubling. And I would say, based on my experience, it's been a little bit opposite, but not so much so, in that what we try to do at Verizon is to use a virtual meeting room whenever possible, because the addressing is simple. It could be chris@join.mymeetings.com. So you could share that with your business partners, etc. But that still is just a very small step to cracking the stone here, because the fact that we don't have a global dial plan, which is one of the major initiatives of OVCC this year, and we have not put that on our roadmap until recently, and the fact that we do not have a global directory were two issues in the past that we're really focusing on collectively now as an industry, because until we have kind of, a white pages or something as simple as that for people to use, to John's earlier point, it's not going to be as easy as picking up your cell phone or your home telephone number or dialing from your home phone. So the other thing that I think is troubling here, but certainly something that we could approach and deal with, is the fact that only a third of the IT decision makers think external addressing is significant from an impediment point of view. And that's troubling because there's such a disparity between the two work groups. So the way OVCC is dealing with this is by completely shifting our marketing and messaging focus. What we did the last 2 years, which you saw in the previous slide, the one I spoke to with all those wonderful members, was try to entice them to join. What is the value to your organization? But what we're doing this year is completely shifting our focus away from marketing and messaging towards our members, and instead marketing and messaging to the marketplace from a more educational point of view, and targeting that messaging very specifically to what each set of stakeholders find to be problematic. I'll give you another example that was in the study, but perhaps not here. Not surprisingly, IT decision makers are terrified of security. They're terrified of the fact that their network may not be able to handle the added bandwidth requirements for video. So moving from internal communications to external communications, OVCC being more of an education body as well as a standard setting body, we hope will help shift these numbers the next time we do a survey.
Perfect. So for the folks that are in here, how many of you guys use video conferencing regularly? Here's the audience participation. Everyone. Nice. Like this group. Like this group. How many of you know what your address is for the video endpoint you use most frequently? 1, 2. We have a pretty sophisticated group here. Your hand started to go up and then went back down. That's much more the normal reaction that I expect. Oh yeah, no, well, wait a minute. What would I tell somebody? I know I personally, on my desktop, I've got 3 different addresses which open up 3 different video, which then have a conflict on the registry, which then mean it doesn't really matter if I know it or not. But I think it's interesting. We've got a lot of video users in here. That's great. So once again, I want to encourage you guys. You see something you disagree with, jump up. Let us know. Let us know what you think. Let's have a deeper conversation. So what we're seeing, we saw, generally internal on the last slide. We've got, both IT and business decision makers as well as iWorkers agree that, vast majority, 2/3, 4/5 of their calling is internal. And what we see is only about 1/4 of video communications are ad hoc, not scheduled. So people are very much, and part of the scheduling is human factors, right? We got to get on a calendar. If you want to talk to Joe, he's pretty important. Sally doesn't talk to anybody if it's not on her calendar, that kind of stuff. But what I think many people are very used to is I have to schedule the equipment, I have to schedule a port, I have to schedule a room, I have to schedule this, that, and the other. And that's something I think that is more of an issue. But for this, I wanted to talk to Peter. Peter, you guys have made a big business at Tata around multi-point video conferencing, which has traditionally been very scheduled, and I think we've talked about ad hoc becoming more important. What are you guys doing to support the current use model and be ready for what's coming?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, because you're correct to say that traditionally video conferencing, given the logistics involved and some of the challenges mentioned earlier, is it going to work, how do I dial, etc., tended to be scheduled and maybe even tested in advance. Yep. What you're seeing now with sort of the multiplication of soft clients all over the place, I mean, ubiquitous clients like a Link or a Jabber client, or even over-the-top stuff that people are bringing into the office, there's a lot of different ways you can do video. And so what we're seeing is a shift from scheduled interactions between fixed locations or fixed endpoints to ad hoc meetings anywhere, anytime, any place. And that's sort of the demand, and the services are catching up with that. So what we've done is move from what was scheduled bridging services to completely ad hoc or reservationless services. And people can simply, you've seen it for a while in the form of a VMR, a virtual meeting room, where people have their own static bridge that you can meet up on. and dial in any time, but you move from scheduling endpoints and ports to scheduling people's time and then letting them choose which device they want to dial in from. And the services have to migrate to that way because that's the way humans like to interact. You'll still have things that get scheduled from a B2B. If I need to do a formal call with a supplier or with a customer, that's going to be a scheduled time. But what I'm scheduling is people's time, not their endpoint, not where they're going to be, and that can be left to the device or to the personal choice of device depending on location and situation. And you'll see that happening increasingly, given, as I say, the proliferation of soft clients and a variety of different alternatives now available to users in terms of how they want to participate.
Yep, I think Peter's got a great point there. This proliferation of software and the utilization makes the actual asset a little bit more fungible or virtualizable or whatever technical or non-technical term you want to apply to that. I don't know, how many sessions have folks been in where somebody's mentioned Mayday? I seem to have heard it about 28 times this week. The button on the new Kindle Fire, you push and you see the customer service agent helping you. If it were a hardware-based solution, we had to schedule resources, that would be technically near impossible to implement. Today with software, it's a lot easier, and what you're seeing is folks like Tata adjusting to those changes, implementing them in their network, and then making the processes work. So as you talk about this software and this proliferation of devices and bring your own, which I think we've already hit on, you've got a lot of information workers who are coming. Maybe I want to use a proprietary client on my mobile device. Maybe I have a software solution that I got from IT, but I want to use it to talk to somebody outside the business. You've got a lot of different folks that are using different solutions. And when we ask information workers, how hard is that? One of the things we asked was, do you have to bring your own network? So if you're pulling out your iPhone, you're using FaceTime, chances are that's going over the cellular network. You could be connected to Wi-Fi inside, but what we see when we talk to IT decision makers is they're blocking a lot of video with the firewall. Now, a few years ago, I used to get an inquiry pretty much every other day. How do I stop this YouTube thing? It's killing my network. And you had to go back and go, well, you're sure it's YouTube? I know it's a video media. Is there a business purpose? And you found covered things like people keeping competitive training videos on YouTube for their salespeople, which was never a great idea, but it pointed to a different problem. So what we see here is we got to about 20% of firms reporting that they're just wide open. Video comes across my network, I don't care, which means 80% of them are blocking or controlling video at some level, and yet 90% of our information workers say, I'm not bringing my own network. Yeah?
So, when you mentioned controlling, do you differentiate between blocking versus throttling?
So in that 80%, there were three choices. I block all video, I whitelist video, I blacklist video. So there's all.
You didn't list like I throttle down to only SD.
No, that was not one of the options in the survey. So that's a data clarification question. Thank you. But I still say we got a big difference between what we got here. And does anybody have a hypothesis, a plan, a supposition? Why would these numbers be so apparently different?
I think it's, I guess, conservatism to a certain extent. I mean, if you think about it, most of the data networks for companies were designed effectively to be, a closed network with strong authentication amongst a known set of connected individuals or devices. What you want with collaboration is pretty much the opposite, an open network with weak authentication to be able to allow access to anybody, anytime, anywhere. Fundamentally different design principles. You give that to a guy who's responsible for IT, which people generally only tend to notice when it doesn't work. He's got a very low risk tolerance, right? Yep. So you throw video on there, which, if you look at the voice telephony network, voice telephony existed before the enterprise really started implementing it, right? There was a public exchange that allowed voice connections to happen before companies started adopting telephony for business. Opposite way around with video. There's no equivalent of the public exchange for video. And yet now you've got users coming and saying, hey, I want to do video within the corporate environment. And so I think it's a matter of, when we service enterprise accounts, the variety of the ways that people deal with the video, and even the way they simply deal with their internet access and IP addressing and load balancers and, proxies, all of those things are so very different enterprise to enterprise that there's not sort of a accepted standard. There are standard technologies people are using, but they're applied in a wide variety of ways. So I think it's a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of catch-up, and the fact that there's potentially nowadays a lot of risk of leaving any sort of exposure to a corporate network. So it's going to happen a little bit slowly, and I think it's getting better. I mean, the ways that people construct an enterprise architecture to break out video to do B2B is getting better and getting more standardized and getting more accepted. But I think it does take a little while to catch up, and that may be one of the drivers for the rise of internal or intra-company preceding the B2B stuff, because the intra-company thing, and generally most of the applications you see for UCC solve that problem first. You take a link, it's much better intra-company than it is B2B. And so all these things sort of conspire, and you'll see sort of the intra-company probably happen, and then as people sort of figure out and get more comfortable with it, you'll see more and more breakout. In the meantime, users are going to do what users do, so they'll bring it into the network and use it and push the envelope in an era of BYOD.
I find it very interesting that 90% say, yeah, I use video and I use it on the corporate network, but 80% say they don't know how to do addressing and things like that. It's just, it's a very strange world. And this study, how many folks here are from vendors or service providers in the video industry? About, well, not even half. Okay. All right. So if you guys are members of OVCC, this data is up at OVCC. It's available. I encourage you to go in and take a look at it, because there's a lot more rich data behind what we're going to talk about here today. We're kind of touching the tip of the iceberg, as they say. And with that, let's go and let's talk a little bit deeper about iWorker preferences. We've talked about BYO, we've talked about using corporate networks, we've talked about security. What do you actually do with video when you're at work? And we ask people, I've talked about video in my research for a long time, and 2 or 3 years ago as graphical user interfaces and high definition video and more reliable IP networks came into being, I spent a lot of time talking about 60% of human communication is nonverbal, right? The social anthropologist view of video, the great promise of better communication. When we went out and asked information workers, we asked a variety of different things. Is it personal relationships, professional relationships? Is it maintaining your boss-subordinate relationship, nurturing a professional relationship? And all those, were somewhat important. People recognize the value. But the number one answer, which frankly I did not expect from a theoretical point of view, is explaining details more clearly with visual cues. Things that I can explain when I'm talking to you. You see my eyes, I can hold up an example, those type of things became much more important. And as I'm sitting here trying to look down at my notes, who are we going to, John, I think you were, that's it, we're going to talk a little bit about this one.
Yeah, I mean, what I take away from looking at this are really two things that, I guess the first thing that strikes me is the very first line item says, explain details more clearly with visual cues, which to me says that a camera is not just simply an eyeball looking at the person talking to them, but the eyeball is another eyeball that can be used to show the other person something that they can't see themselves. That's where we see a lot of business value, at least today, being placed on visual communication, is to show them something that I can't see as a way of accelerating the business process. And right behind that is really about nurturing professional relationships. So even being the video guy, I do a fair amount of traveling, and usually I have to have that first meeting in person and shake the person's hand to establish the relationship. Once I do that, video has been a fantastic medium to help maintain a professional relationship, getting over the trust and all those other issues that humans normally assess from one another when they're about to do business. You get through that in that first meeting. So that's why the nurturing of a professional relationship and the boss-subordinate thing is high on that list, is because it's really about nurturing kind of that in-person experience that typically they start off with. You see that most of the personal relationship stuff doesn't really have the same type of business value, and thus kind of stacking lower on the list. But clearly having another eyeball, that if I'm a field technician and I'm out trying to fix a washing machine and I don't think I have the part to fix it, and I can take my smartphone or tablet and actually stick the camera into places so that the people back at the help desk can tell me what I'm doing wrong, or they can help me troubleshoot a problem, that extends a lot of business value. And traditionally, we don't think about applications like that. When we think about video conferencing, we think about two humans talking to each other, saving money on travel, reading each other's emotions. That's all true, but true business value comes from how it actually impacts the business process, and I think that's really the reason why that ends up being the #1 response.
Yeah, there you go. So the Maytag repairman is lonely, give him a camera to keep him company. But the business uses are actually, I think, important, and that's actually the next question. You know, if video were easier to use, what type of meetings do you think you would actually use it to support? And you see pretty high answers to all different types of meetings. I know when we talked about this, John, I think you and Christine kind of got going on this very early on in the study. So I'm going to kind of step back and let you guys talk to this slide.
Yeah, one point I wanted to make about this, actually on the previous slide, that I thought was interesting, which is kind of a different take than John had, or perhaps just a different focus, would be the fact that a very low percentage of users really want to communicate with others whom they have no relationship. And I think that is just too high risk, right, in people's minds right now. They are afraid that if they're meeting a potential customer, a potential vendor, someone at a high level within a company, they're just going to flub it. It's not going to work. So how is OVCC replying to that response, or responding to that problem? I think what we need to do as an organization is talk to people, and this kind of is, you know, the counter over-the-top philosophy about what is our infrastructure. It's MPLS-based, which is inherently secure. It has quality of service. It is encrypted fully. So we need to re-educate our members about putting those messages out to the marketplace, but we also need to suggest to our members that reliability is critical next to usability. So, you know what, guys? Give it away for free. Just give it away for free for a few months. Let people see how it works. Let them get comfortable with it. And I think that, without the risk of actually using it in a live environment, may in fact help people a lot. So, to move to the next slide, I think, John.
I think we're back on the next one now, or?
Yeah, yep. Okay. So John, this was your lead, I think, right?
Yeah, well, and again, we talk about video historically as another device like a cell phone. But I think increasingly what we're seeing is video moving into the unified communication domain. Video is not necessarily being perceived as a separate thing. It's being looked at as something that's integrated into something I already use, or into a unified communication platform that I'm familiar with. And the things like, I mean, the top things here all have to do with the whole sense of collaboration between making decisions and brainstorming meetings. Typically, and I'm sure this is the same with many people in the audience, that we work in distributed enterprises where the 5 people that know the most about how to solve a problem in your company don't go to the same office every day. And thus, the whole value of bringing video in is to emulate the in-person experience, but surrounded by tools, content sharing, and messaging, and instant and presence. All those things help in identifying the individuals that they want to do these activities with. So for me, these are strong indicators that the direction of video is moving more towards the unified communication realm, because of the things that they say they're doing require more than just seeing each other. It really requires using a host of tools in order to make those decisions and to reach consensus. So that's how I kind of read into that data.
And I think the call out on the bottom actually is a significant data point to support Christine's segue onto this slide. You know, we split our information workers into a group who had used video and a group who had not. The group who had used video, 73% of them, better than 7 out of 10, said it makes them more productive. Someone who had not used video, it was 2 out of 5, 4 out of 10, which means, exactly what Christine said, put it in their hands, let them use it, have it be worthwhile, and fully 1/3 of the information workforce will see value that did not before. So for those of you that are looking at video and putting it in people's hands so that it works, try it. You'll like it. It's actually a great message in this video space. And we talked about meeting types on the last slide. This one we're actually talking about actual processes. So we asked a long series of use case type questions. What would you do with video if it were easier to use? Are there people in your organization that are interested in using video? And we accumulated those questions into a series of processes: issue resolution, response management, access to a subject matter expert or education, logistics support, healthcare processes. Healthcare is a big user of video. Just generic collaboration or generic presentation and communication type tasks. And we presented the data here where you see information workers, generally speaking, are less favorable about video regardless of the process, and IT decision makers are more favorably inclined to believe that people are interested in using video in their organization, which I thought was an interesting dichotomy, which we saw across a lot of the different questions. But when we come down to some of the actual process questions, I think, Christine, you were going to talk a little bit about processes and use cases, right? You've done some work on this at Verizon.
I think this is really critically important from so many levels. I think just from a Verizon perspective, I'll speak for a moment and then speak to UC&C at a more general level. At Verizon we think about video and kind of the phases of adoption, kind of the first being requirement, right? Your managing director says you are required, we spent all this money on our infrastructure, I need to show a return on investment, I'd like to show a return on investment, so now all my staff meetings are going to be on video, like it or not. So people kind of begrudgingly go in and they do their video, and they get used to it, and they kind of like, well, yeah, I accept I have to do this. But to really get to the adoption of video, which is taking that mandatory staff meeting and showing business results as a function of using it, is really where the bread and butter comes in, and I think where you're going to see massive adoption. So if you just look at the statistics for a few minutes, I think they're very telling on a couple levels. The first is, and I'll just pick two of them, let's say healthcare and education. The wide disparity between the IT decision maker and the iWorker. IT decision maker is much more bullish on this, which when you think about it is a real barrier to adoption within the organization. Because if the organization who is paying and maintaining that system and allowing access to the end users does not believe that they're going to see a business value, that is a big issue that we have to address collectively at OVCC. One of the ways we're dealing with that is by coming up with ways where we make video part of the daily business process flow that people use to do their jobs. And what we will be doing this year, and I'll give you just a simple example in healthcare in a minute, is getting our members to pony up and say, what are the success stories that you've seen with your customer base, whereby we can quantitatively share with our potential customers the benefits that you've seen. I'll give you just an example in healthcare, because I think it's one of the more forward-thinking verticals in terms of this kind of technology. I mean, how great is it to be in a primary care physician's office, going in for your physical, and oh my God, there's something wrong. And it's a primary care physician, and we know how specialized medicine in the U.S. is today, but they notice something with your retina, a potentially detached retina. And the ability to video in an expert at that point in time and quickly get a diagnosis and shorten the period between diagnosis and treatment. I mean, the value of that is something that I think should be quantified and shared with other organizations. So that, as the marketing chair of OVCC, is something that we'll really be driving home this year.
Yeah, but I think the other thing with healthcare is one client that I worked with, it was actually in the insurance side of the healthcare world, and they worked with a set of healthcare providers in the UK that after surgery, they'd send somebody home with kind of a stripped down laptop with some medical gear on it. You had what do you call that thing, a sphygmomanometer or whatever to take your blood pressure. It had a camera so you could look in the eye, things like that. And what they found is by using that device with video and with some of the other medical data, people do their post-operative checkups more regularly. People who live further from the hospital were more likely to actually catch problems, and their readmittance rate actually went down. So there was a real medical result from using that type of device, and video was a part of that solution. But these use cases, I think across the board, need to drive to business value, and when they do drive to business value, business decision makers are willing to fund them, information workers are willing to use them, and as we see here, IT loves to buy new toys, so that's not a problem for them to get them on board, generally speaking. So we now went to the folks who don't use video, and we asked them, okay, if you don't use video today, why not? And there were a series of choices. IT doesn't provide a solution, doesn't allow me, video conferencing doesn't connect. Primarily technical reasons in the yellow ball. The red ball are primarily usability or human factors. No one I communicate with uses video. I don't want to be on video. People I talk to don't want to be on video. It's too complicated. Those types of things. So what we see when we look at this, and what we do, we took all the responses. Everybody who had one of the technical answers goes in the technical ball. Everybody who had one of the usability goes in the usability ball. There's very little overlap. So there's actually two distinct obstacles to adoption. One is technical, the thing that most of the industry has spent a ton of time trying to fix. And one is usability, the thing that we've all mostly ignored. If people want to use video, they'll use video, and we need to pay more attention to the fact that in order to drive adoption and build business value, there's actually two sides to that equation. And I wanted to turn around at this point of the game and talk to Peter and see, I think at Tata, you guys had some thoughts around this as well, right?
Yeah, and it's basically I guess it's hard to say which one is really stopping people, and the whole idea of it might not work, or it's, it may not be of sufficient quality, inhibits a lot of people, particularly the more mission critical that meeting gets. The second piece, once they get over that hurdle, then you start to get into, how easy is it to use. And nowadays the standard for easy to use is driven by, apps you get on your phone. You don't have a user manual. You don't have a set of instructions. You just take it out and you start using it and you figure it out by playing with it. That's kind of what people are expecting in terms of ease of use. And so once there's some people are worried about both. I think you'd find that once some folks get over the technical fear, then they're going to start complaining about ease of use. And so you kind of have to address both, sometimes in series, sometimes in parallel, but as I say, the standard for ease of use is driven by consumer apps now, and folks like Apple. It's a very different kind of game than, perhaps folks have been used to in the past.
Yep, the hardware, the software, and the service goes to making an excellent user experience. Exactly. So there's more than one dragon to slay here. So we only got a couple vendors and service providers. I assume we've got a lot of folks that are implementing video at their business. Is that show of hands of people who are thinking about video at their business? One guy who knows his video address and has good questions. Do you see your users? Do you see personas in these balls? People who've come to you and said, yeah, so this data is making sense. Good. All right, that's awesome. Now we're going to talk for just a second about some regional and industry variances. Now, whenever I talk to vendors always want to know where the hotspots, where do we go, what industry, what region, what age group. Generation is a bit of a hackneyed shortcut in this area. A lot of people talk about Generation X as the YouTube generation. They all want to be on video. Actually, one of the folks that I cooperate most closely with on video research at Forrester is a millennial, and I may look like it, but I'm not. I may not look like it either. So this younger analyst, who I will not name, is more of a curmudgeon about video than anybody I think I know in the industry. He truly doesn't think it provides value. He truly doesn't like it. He doesn't like to use it. He reads the research and he understands, and he'll write a report that talks about the right use cases. But he is a younger person who fundamentally hates it when that camera turns on. That light turns on his laptop and he shuts down. He literally won't contribute as well inside a meeting, which means as an infrastructure and operations professional, as an IT professional, when you're rolling these things out, you have to instruct people like this what's acceptable, what's the value, what's expected, so that they know what to do when that light comes on and their camera is running. Otherwise, they will just shut down. And this kind of cognitive dissonance by my millennial partners kind of drives me nuts. And I think he started to do it to make a point at this time. So anyway, regional and industry variances. So APAC is the orange bars. And APAC has a huge amount of interest. So we have talked about this slide over and over during the course of this research project. It was not a result that I expected. I think Christine, who works at Verizon, has customers in APAC and in Europe and in North America, is like, I don't know, I see more interest in Europe. John at Polycom, same thing. We're not shipping more to Asia. But we're lucky to have Peter up here as well, who flew in from Indonesia just to explain what the heck these orange bars mean. So whoever wants to talk about this one, jump up. I think you've all have got a great point of view on this one.
So I guess it's Singapore, not Indonesia.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Close enough.
Whatever. When they land a plane there, they're not sure where it's going anyway. It's not funny. I am sorry.
So I guess having made my career in Asia, I guess one conclusion that I came to is, you read a lot of stuff about, it's cultural differences that inhibit video adoption, and in Asian culture has to be face-to-face. I personally believe that that's not really the case. I mean, that's kind of bullshit. I do think that the same inhibitors that you have seen in the previous slides impact equally in Asia, or perhaps more so. And what you see in Asia a lot of times are smaller regional markets, with the exceptions of the China and Indias. But you also find in some geographies really good internet connectivity, some geographies relatively weak. And you're also finding probably a more heterogeneous environment or balkanized environment than you would in Europe, and definitely more so than in, say, the continental United States. I mean, so to do regional video conferencing in Asia, some of these inhibitors or barriers are a little bit higher. Mm-hmm. And then you've got linguistic and other things that factor in. But I think what I think Asia is ready for is probably, you'll see at some point, a leapfrog country by country, where they just leap into the video age and this latent demand will be converted to actual, and you'll probably see it get adopted much more rapidly than in US and Europe at some point. You'll reach some tipping point, some combination of the application, the service, the connectivity. Country by country will click. And I think you'll also see a lot of the countries that are predominantly hooked into a global supply chain will rise only as fast as Europe and US, or their customer base asks them to communicate via video. Because that whole potential of how it would, suddenly revolutionize supply chains really only goes as fast as the customer who's doing the buying wants to communicate that way. So some of it will follow US, Europe, some of it will follow infrastructure and the application and the service catching up. Mm-hmm. But I think you've got nothing unique inhibiting it that's unique to Asia. It's simply that the relative height of some of the barriers are a little bit higher.
Okay.
So I have a question. One of the things that puzzled me at first, but then I thought, well, maybe it's a cultural thing. I mean, do you believe, my belief, from my lens, is that when I think of, Asia, perhaps not Australia, I think of kind of the cultural things and more formal and, hand the business card over with two hands and that kind of thing. Is that the reality, having worked there? Is that culture real, or is that something perceived by, a Westerner to be not true?
Oh, I mean, you certainly see cultural differences everywhere you go. And yeah, there are different ways of doing things. That's definitely there. And that would roll through to video as well as with any other type of collaboration or human interaction. I just don't think there's anything innate in any of the cultural norms that prohibit video. I think it's a variety of factors, but I don't think it's that anyone is more hardwired, more or less so, to use video, I guess. Is that's
interesting, because I would have thought the opposite. I would have thought that, they would be more apt to use video since, you know, the personal relationship building, to me anyway, from my perspective, was so important. So it's interesting that that is not the case.
I guess we've got some Asians in the audience. Anybody have a perspective? Anything inhibiting the Asia-Pacific adoption of video? I mean, because you look at US, Europe, that's traditionally about 80% of the video conferencing market, with the 20% in Asia. And so there appears to be, even with the audio, though, I mean, even in audio conferencing, there's a high, there's a latent demand. I mean, if you look at Asia, you would think that audio conferencing adoption would be higher than it is for video as well. But it's, for whatever reason, it's not as high. And it may be that the linkages across regions are different, or it may be that, you know, in a lot of the countries, most of the business is concentrated in one large city. Yep. And there could be all sorts of factors, but I don't know if anyone has a perspective they'd like to add to this.
Well, the other thing that I would add, Peter, and maybe you can just comment on this, is the fact that there are some locations in Asia Pacific that, from a telecommunications point of view, are more advanced. And that video is not something we're trying to evangelize in that market like we are here. It's something that's been adopted, and they've built standards to their infrastructures that enable that and have been for some time. Have you seen some evidence of some of that?
Sort of. So I guess Australia is probably the biggest video market in Asia, and it's, you know, pretty much on par or higher than US or any of the other countries. What the surprising ones are places like Japan or Korea, where the infrastructure is great. Adoption of mobile technology is leading the world, I mean, in some of the application spaces, but video is still lagging for whatever reason. And, you know, so that's kind of a mystery. If you look at, the other one that's a little surprising is when you look at India. Some of our customers in India are really adopt video within the company to a much, much greater extent than I've seen, you know, Western companies do so, and they use the heck out of it. But they also have a dedicated team of guys who just make damn sure it works. And so, you know, it's a little bit of a mix, but I think the infrastructure one is an interesting one because it doesn't seem to have a strong correlation to the quality of the infrastructure. If you look at Japan and Korea, they are low video, great technology, so hard to say.
Yep, so I think unintentionally we kind of reinforce this. There's technical reasons, there's human factors reasons, and you have to have both of them. Either one is necessary, neither one by itself is sufficient. I think actually when we met at coffee this morning at Cocoa Bean or Cocoa Coast, whatever it's called, Peter said, well, really the culture of business is we got to make money. And if video helps me make money, I'm going to go do it. And that, I think, cuts across the rest of the cultural norms that we see. At the end of the day, we all have shareholders or paychecks or mortgages. Industry, we looked across a variety of industries. We tried to take the survey responses and put them together. Public sector, financial services, professional services, manufacturing and energy had enough responses to kind of accumulate up. And we asked, you know, what's the value? How do you determine the business value of your video? Now, I personally would have expected, when you talk about business cases, to see travel savings, and that's it. I have personally preached a great deal over the last couple of years when I'm talking to salespeople about video opportunities. If you look at a guy in the eye and says he can save $1 million on travel if he puts in these rooms, and you're going to charge him $500,000, stop talking. Now, travel savings have been taken out of budgets across the board, around the world. There's not a whole lot here unless somebody's going to pay you to stay home. That's getting harder and harder to justify. So these other rationale come through, everything from a strategic initiative from the CEO down to revenue generation, which is still our smallest one. I talked to one person here at the show, actually, just this morning. They were talking about putting video into their contact center. And they did it because when they trialed it, the average revenue per call went up by 20-something%. They got a higher yield when they could explain things more clearly than they did with just a plain audio connection. So revenue generation becomes a very real thing. What we see, you know, the call out at the top, 72% of IT decision makers are using travel savings, and 69% use employee productivity. So it's still the vast majority, but these other categories are becoming more and more important, and will continue to be more important as video gets deeper integrated into the business. So, John, you haven't talked in a while. How about you?
So, I think these results are really not surprising in the sense that for anyone who's out positioning and selling these types of technologies, the way that you can really establish a business case to make a decision is on these hard facts. How much did I save? How much more did I get from my employee? And usually that's the basis in which these technology decisions are made. However, I would argue that everything that sits below, let's say, clearer communications are equally as important, if not even more significant. I think oftentimes, as an industry, we position the technology based on cost savings, but we really don't spend enough time working with individual companies on an adoption strategy that really gets them to fully realize the investment that they've made. And if they did that, then I think you'd see numbers down below like improved innovation, revenue generation, and customer satisfaction rocketing to the top. It's the fact that I don't think enough time is being spent by the people who have the greatest expertise on helping companies truly realize the value of what they're buying so that they're getting more than just travel savings. So clearly there's more work that we on the OVCC and other vendors in the industry need to do. To me, this was a wake-up call on barriers that weren't obvious, and to me we often preach about the lower ones, but when the decision is made, it's made about the higher ones, and oftentimes they don't get the bottom advantages because they don't have really a focus on the adoption of what they've invested in.
Right. Yep. And I hear that time and time again. People measure their travel savings after the fact to prove the investment. So that gets us to the end of the day that we've got. Hopefully, as you guys walk away from this session, you've learned a couple things about the video market that maybe weren't obvious, maybe reinforced something you already knew. It sounded like we had a pretty video experienced crowd today. I think the biggest thing, if you're going to walk away with, is there is real business value here. It's not just 60% of human communication is nonverbal. And the obstacles are not just technical. Making this stuff work in the lab is not enough. You have to actually get out with those information workers and help them understand why video helps them get their job done better so that there's higher answers on these business value. Because at the end of the day, people don't buy technology dog bones, they buy business tools to help them get their job done better. So, thank you very much for coming. We're all here for a few more minutes. If you've got more questions, we're about 7 or 8 minutes over. Sorry about that. At least it was interesting enough to keep the chairs warm. Thank you very much.